You, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. All righty. Have you ever had the time here where you basically are having to take on two things that push against each other, that create a real math problem, and that telling the truth about it, how do you say, oh yeah, gets the crap kicked out of you, but let's have at it. President Trump stood there just a couple days ago, and within his speech, when you talk about some of the policy to help our brothers and sisters in this country, there was the discussion of no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, these things, and the pushing to get us in Congress, Senate included, to move the extension of the 2017 tax cuts. And I'm going to show you why that's so important. But at the same time, within almost the same breath, the president looked out at us and said he also wants a balanced budget. Okay. Now we need to deal with the reality of how hard that math is, but there's a way to do it. I just don't know if intellectually, when you think about the things you heard behind these microphones this last week, how many of our brothers and sisters here, how many of the public, how many of the armies of lobbyists that are in the hallways here lined up saying they want more spending, more money, more regulation on their competition? So let's go through some of the basic math facts, and then let's have a brutally honest conversation of how we stabilize and how far we can actually go. All right, an oldie but a goodie. And the numbers are actually worse, but I didn't want to print another chart, so we've been using the same one for last year. Do you see all the red in the chart? That's what we call mandatory. It's auto, it's earned benefits, it's you served in the military, your pensions, those things. Interest is automatic. You got to pay it. See the blue? That's military and what we call non-defense discretionary. A member of Congress, other than in a reconciliation opportunity, we're going to come back why it's so important, only votes on this blue. Every dime a member of Congress votes on, other than that moment of reconciliation, is borrowed. It's all borrowed money. Last year, for every dollar we took in tax receipts, we borrowed $1.39. And look, the number of times I've come before here, these mics, and I've done the charts and shown, in times when we've had very high marginal tax rates, we take in about 17, 18% of GDP in taxes. When we've had very low marginal tax rates, we take in about 17, 18% of GDP. And it's the seesaw of lower marginal tax rates, economy grows, higher marginal tax rates, economy shrinks. We're getting basically the same percentage of the economy in tax receipts. There's an article on the Manhattan Institute's website that does an aggregation of lots of studies, many of them from left-wing groups, showing that if you raised every tax that functionally the Dems have offered that's gotten scored, and then you adjust it for its economic effects, you get about 1.5% of GDP in taxes, or additional taxes. Okay. The cuts we had been talking about were now actually getting much broader. But let's go back to that 1.5. We're going to borrow 7.25% of the entire U.S. economy this year will be borrowed. So when the president turned to us and says he really wants a balanced budget, that's a tough one. Now, his Treasury Secretary has talked about if we could get down to 3% stability. Ray Dalio, who's talking about a book he's giving away about his incredible fear of the squeeze that's happening around the world because the countries in the world are binging on debt, and that there may be a shortage of borrowable capital, which will cause us, as he says, a heart attack. Says if we could get back to 3% of the size of the economy. Okay, maybe that should be our goal. But once again, remember, your government is functionally an insurance company with an army. Because the vast majority of our spending, the vast majority, are things like Social Security, Medicare, other benefits you either get because you hit a certain age, you worked a certain number of quarters, you fell below a certain income, you're part of a certain tribal group, but they're automatic. And the one time we get an honest opportunity to really look at them is when there's this reconciliation, you're able to open up and look at the formula spendings. So let's actually walk through, for someone like myself, who basically is intellectually whipsawing them, just beating the crap out of myself. I do not want, and I believe it would be a horrible thing, to allow taxes to go up at the end of this year, particularly on small businesses and the working population. This is the average, and understand, I represent the Phoenix-Scottsdale area. For my folks, our math is it's like $3,300, almost $3,400 a year. A year for my average family in tax hikes. But for the country, it's $2,850 is the tax hike that's already in the law. That's already what's coming at you. That's what the Democrats have been arguing, saying, we shouldn't extend these tax cuts. And then they give these beautiful speeches about defending the working class. This is coming to you. This is part of the battle. And understand, those tax hikes aren't just going on rich people. 62% of the tax-paying population actually sees their taxes go up. And I'm going to show you some distributional charts later. Remember, after 2017, we actually made the tax code in the United States more progressive, meaning the higher income, we're paying a higher percentage of the federal income tax. But what we also did is we functionally took half of our brothers and sisters who make much more moderate wages, and we pulled them off the tax system. They're not paying, now they're still paying payroll tax, which is your Social Security, your Medicare, your unemployment, your disability. But those you pay in as sort of your retirement account. Think of it that way. But they pay almost no income tax. And we're mostly going to focus on these charts about the income tax side. So just once again, remember, this is coming at you at the end of the year. This is what the budget reconciliation ultimately is about. But for some of us, we're stressing about how do I not let the taxes go up, but how do I not play the scam of, here, we're going to extend your tax cuts. Here, give me your credit card so I can charge it to you, because that's the scam. Is it really economically honest? Because we have a great set of data that shows if we borrow the money at the end of the decade, it actually costs those working families more, because we slow down the economy, we raise interest rates, those things, than saying, I extended your tax cuts, but because I charged it to you, your retirement account, your kid's future. Because when we borrow money, understand, borrowing money is a tax. It's just not collected right now. It's collected in the future with interest on it. All righty, let's set those back here. Try not to hit anyone. So let's actually walk through a chart that has upset a number of my fellow Republicans, but the math is honest. So the day we were elected this November, publicly borrowed, and let's do a quick explanation. When you hear someone say our total debt is 37 trillion, okay, or 36 point whatever, a portion of that we borrow internally. We reach into the Social Security Trust Fund and borrow that money. Now we pay interest. The Treasury gives them like special T-bills, and we pay interest on it. And in some years, the interest we were paying to the different trust funds we borrowed money from was actually a pretty good interest rate. That's internal borrowing. Then you have the public borrowing. These are the auctions. This is the note, T-bill, bond that's in your retirement account. It's another country may buy it as part to hold in their version of their Federal Reserve. And remember, China's not our #1 buyer of our debt. Matter of fact, China's been rolling off its debt for years, the holdings of U.S. sovereigns. They're actually somewhere in the I think under $900 billion now. Actually, should make you a little nervous that certain foreign governments are no longer binging on U.S. debt, because we would love to get their money. But most of the debt we sell to your retirement, to the business, to the bank, other things. The day we were elected, publicly borrowed debt was about $28 trillion. So let's do a math experiment. Baseline borrowing for the next 10 years, $22 trillion. If we were to do the tax extensions, and this is going to make sense when you hear people running around here saying, let's just use current policy. Let's just pretend our spending stays the same. Our tax policy all stays the same. We don't have to pay attention to the actual law. That would be $5.5 trillion plus another $1.3 trillion on top of that in interest. Okay? Then let's add in some of the president's priorities. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. If we did if we could find the mechanics, it's a little harder because you can't actually do it in reconciliation. No tax on Social Security. If you add those all up, it would mean at the end of 2035, the amount of debt that's been borrowed from the public, one of the reasons the public number's higher is in 2033, Social Security Trust Fund's empty. So you don't get to reach over there and keep using that as your piggy bank, even though you got to pay it back every month because the tax receipts from FICA taxes don't match the checks going out the door. Here's the punchline. It took us 240 years to get to that $28 trillion. We're basically talking about doubling it in 10. That the publicly held debt, it's not exact, but it's close. It's math I can do in my head. We're talking about almost doubling the publicly held debt in the next 10 years. So when you hear those coming behind the microphone saying, Doge, it's horrible, it's evil. Really? Federal spending this year will be about $7 trillion. But we're only going to take in 5. So we're going to borrow about $2.3 trillion. If I came to you in your business and said, you're bleeding, for every dollar of revenue you're taking in, you're spending $1.36, $1.39, wouldn't you turn around and try to find some ways to reduce spending, to modernize, on how you do your business? Could we, think of this, if we're going to spend 7, could we find 15% savings? Maybe. Be really hard. People will complain. It will screw up some people's business models. Some of the public employee unions will be cranky. But if you could find 15%, that'd be $1 trillion a year. Still doesn't get you to a 3% of the GDP borrowing, because remember again, we're going to borrow 7.25% of the entire economy will be consumed by this government in borrowing this year. So when idiots like me hold up charts like this and I get complaints saying, you're hurting my feelings, the fact of the matter is, this is why we got to thread this needle and do really hard things. How do we extend the tax cuts, the tax reforms, the tax benefits, the baseline economic growth of what we accomplished in 2017, but find ways to offset as much of it as we possibly can. Once again, even CBO and some of the outside studies made it very clear, if you offset the spending so that money stays in the economy instead of being borrowed by government here, by it staying in the economy, you maximize your economic growth because it gets lent to this business, it gets lent to this new construction project. When we take it out of the economy, remember our baseline, we're already borrowing $22 trillion over the next 10 years. How many more trillion should we stack on top of that? And if we don't find offsets, it means we doubled U.S. publicly held debt in 10 years. 240 years, and then we double it again in 10. And this is how insane the chart looks from the people running around this place saying, just use current policy because it's easy and I don't have to say no to the army of people sitting in my office wanting money for whatever their cause is. You do realize when you start looking at this stuff, you're talking about 140, 150+% of debt to GDP. So you go from 100 today to almost a 50% increase in the next 10 years. It's uncomfortable. Primary driver of U.S. sovereign debt, interest, and healthcare costs. Now, are you all ready for if we were to do, the people that run around here just want to pretend the law doesn't exist and that if we're already doing it, we should just pretend, look the other way, and just keep doing it. If we do that, that means in 9 budget years, interest, just the interest, and this was assuming the interest rates from like last December, we spend over $2 trillion a year in interest. So when you hear members from the different committees around here, how hard this is, how difficult it is, when the Democrats are saying, how dare you talk about these benefits, help us. Where's your creativity? Where's your modernization? Where's the use of technology to disrupt the cost but make it better, faster, cheaper? Help us. But that doesn't give you the dopamine hits and the hope to win back the next election, to take the majority, because winning around here is more important than doing what's moral, right, and economically rational. This is important. Are you ready? Are we ready as a country? We're going to probably, my math for this year is we're going to spend about $1.2 trillion in interest. And dear Lord, please don't let interest rates move against us. Also, just an economic concept I need everyone to sort of process. Think of a seesaw. When you see interest rates going down, yay! Except the problem is it typically means the economy is slowing down. There's less demand for debt in the markets. There's less demand for the debt in the markets and the economy is slowing down. What happens, Mr. Speaker? What happens to the U.S. Treasury? It means tax receipts are going down. Now, they may not go down immediately. We often don't see the lag for 3 quarters, sometimes a year. But we can see it in the growth calculations that, interest rates are falling down, economy is slowing down, we're going to take in less tax receipts. Oh, good. Economy is growing. Interest rates go up. Now we're paying it because this year, or in the next 12 months, we have to refinance like $9 trillion of U.S. sovereign debt, plus probably add another couple trillion on top of that of what we call new issuances. And so those higher interest rates, okay, so we're going to take in higher tax receipts because the economy is doing well, but it all gets consumed by the higher interest rates. The center of this seesaw, it's a technical economic term, we're screwed. There is no free option anymore. When you're walking around with $37 trillion of debt, when your baseline is adding another 22, and that's with none of these policy discussions, why aren't more people around here just terrified? Is it that our constituents are so desperate for more money from the federal government that explaining, we're not giving you something free, we're putting it on your credit card. You will pay this back some fashion. We'll deflate the value of the dollar so your savings crashes. We'll raise the cost of goods. Or at some point, we're going to brutalize your kids, your grandkids, and your retirement. And it doesn't have to be their way. There's ways, and God knows over the last couple of years, I've come here and showed how we can crash the price of health care by just using technology. And then you get the lobbyists in your office, well, that would mean we have to change our business model. Look, Eric Cantor, yesterday, CNBC, was in many ways almost mocking us, former majority leader here, now he's on Wall Street, saying, you really think the bond market isn't going to notice if you just do this pretend thing and say, let's just call this thing current policy, so we'll keep the current tax regime. Yeah, it means financing another $5.5 trillion plus another $1.3 trillion of interest on top of it, and the bond market won't even notice that. Greatest fragility right now to this country we're on the cusp of putting the bond market in charge of this country. Not President Trump, not Congress, because if you're borrowing about $60,000, $70,000 a second every day, what happens when you pull up the next bond auction and not enough people show up for it? It would create chaos around the world. It's a dangerous, dangerous game we're playing around here. But you go home and talk to voters, they want things. We need your help. Please understand this is dangerous, dangerous game we're playing. So let's actually, I was going to show this. I was just trying to make the point. If we do all these things without financing, we're basically over 150% of debt to GDP. So let's actually do something difficult. Treasury Secretary Ray Dalio, these other people who are sort of economic experts, they're lots smarter than I am or anyone else here, keep saying if we could get to 3% of debt every year, it's actually somewhat equivalent to the growth of tax receipts. Okay. To do that, it functionally, to get to 3%, it functionally requires a couple $1 trillion of reduction of spending every year. You realize, think about that. With where we're going growth-wise, how many of you see members of Congress come behind these microphones and say, let's work on this, let's get to $2 trillion a year? But that's actually how screwed up these numbers are. And when you get into the out years, so you get to 2034, thank you. It's not $2 trillion you'd have to move to, it's over $3 trillion. Current policy budget deficit in the billions. If you wanted to be at a 3%, you got to cut 2 this year, 2 the next year, and it grows and grows and grows. I don't think there's an understanding. The United States, so this is a sequitur, these tie together. The United States in 7.5 years now will have more deaths than births. We have a shortage of young people. And yet you want to live in a fantasy world of, oh, we're going to grow at 3%. Great. Tell me how. Unless you're willing to do talent-based immigration, adoption of AI, promotion of synthetic biology to do things better, faster, cheaper. There's ways I can get you there. I'm blessed. I'm the chairman of the board of the Joint Economic Committee, so we have a handful of PhD economists, freaky smart. We have a model to do it. What's my chance, Mr. Speaker, of getting this body to say, President talked about doing a talent-based immigration 2 nights ago. Talked about modernizing, using technology. You know, when you call the IRS, their own auditor says only 31% of the phone calls get answered. Why wouldn't you jump up immediately and say, we're going to use the latest version of an AI chat that sounds like a person, that knows everything about the tax code, will stay on the phone with you, will help you fill out your forms, maybe even send you a YouTube video of how to fill out the form, maybe a PDF of the form, and it will stay on the phone with you all night long and will always pick up the phone. And you get the union going, oh no, you can't use technology. That's part of the discussion going on here. Do you want to keep living and existing in a model that's decades out of date and isn't working and is burying your future in debt? Actually, your current in debt. Functionally, we're borrowing about $6 billion a day. A little math I was doing, standing back off the top of my head. If you had 70,000 federal employees accept early retirement, and they make $135,000 with benefits, you're functionally, you're cutting less than 2 days of borrowing. You need to do it. Do not take that comment as saying, oh, you see, it doesn't enough. Just the opposite. It's just the beginning. The lack of understanding of how much trouble we're in is the problem. Stop pretending, saying, oh, these little things aren't big enough. That's why you got to do dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. But it might affect my business model. It might affect my... Look, do you care about the future? You know, I have a 2.5-year-old we've adopted. My wife's my age. When my little boy becomes, I think my math was 24 years old, so 22 years from now, every tax in the United States has to have doubled just to maintain baseline services, because that's our burn rate. This place is absolutely immoral. And then let's actually add to it, in 8 years, so 2033, Social Security Trust Fund is empty. And yet I'll see my Democrat colleagues come behind, we should expand the benefit. Great, tell me how to finance it. If the first year where the Social Security Trust Fund is completely empty, our rough math is it's over $600 billion a year shortfall. I think that's the entire corporate income tax. There's this lack of understanding of the scale. We're in trouble. What's wrong with this place? Is it so much easier to go home and just lie? If cable television tonight, how many of them are going to do a portion, whether it be the left or the right cable, hold up charts and say, here's the reality of our demographics, the math, and how much trouble we're in? For those folks that come up here and say, I care about poor people, I care about this, do you have any idea how much danger you're putting our future in? Look, I personally believe prosperity is moral. Design a tax code, design a regulatory code, to design the adoption of technology to maximize prosperity. And somehow I'm the idiot who keeps getting up behind this microphone trying to get people saying, let's try to do things hard. Maybe think about how we deliver healthcare services. We're doing modeling with our economists on silly things. How many billions and billions and billions do we spend every year in just Medicare and duplicative MRI scans, X-ray scans, ultrasounds? If you take that scan and attach it to someone's phone and it becomes portable. Now, our original number, I'm having trouble believing it because it needs more vetting, was like 20 to 25 billion a year. What if it's $250 billion over 10? Is that a cut in services, or is that using technology to make it more modern, portable, faster to use, easier to use, more accessible? And there'll be lobbyists who will be in my office tomorrow out because I said this, saying, David, you don't understand. Those duplicate scans are our profit model. Help us. Okay, you're on the left, or even a couple of my Republicans. You don't like the discussions of where we're trying to do reforms? Bring us ideas. There's freaky smart people in this country. You have a supercomputer in your pocket right now. The concept of what this thing can do 15 years ago, did you think you'd have the world's knowledge and AI on it? Save us, save yourself, save your retirement, save your kids, save your grandkids, but you got to do it by thinking. The idiots I get, sorry, Mr. Speaker, I want to retract that. I'll get people say, you know, if we just didn't have foreign aid, and you send them the chart saying it's 5 days of borrowing. This isn't easy, but it's math. And for my friends on the left, they keep saying, you know, make the tax code more progressive. Okay. But you've already seen your own studies from the progressive groups is you might get another 1.5% if you blow up everything, you maximize every tax policy you've ever promoted. You're borrowing 7.25% this year. And remember, today, half the taxpayers, 97% of the federal income tax is paid by the top half. So functioning meaning the bottom half of those who are out there working their hearts out, but they don't make a great income, pay almost no federal income tax. They may pay FICA tax, Social Security, Medicare, those things. This tax system now has become incredibly progressive. Maybe you need to make it more progressive. But don't pretend it actually makes that much difference in the debt model. It doesn't produce nearly the revenues. And I'm going to bang through some of these real quick. Look, Federal tax code remains incredibly progressive. It's more progressive today than it was prior to 2017 tax reform. And today, right now, if you actually take a look at the top earners, they're still paying the vast majority. So what happens when your top 20% is paying like 40 plus percent? Excuse me. The top 20% of income earners are paying, I think it's a little shy of like 70, 80% of all federal income taxes. So instead of an idiot standing here giving you percentages of GDP and numbers, I thought we would do it as time. Let's use it as a calendar. Some people it's easier to see. How Washington financed 366 days of spending in 2024. Remember, it was a leap year. There was an extra day. Top 20% of earners covered 201 days of federal spending. The next 20% covered 41 days. The middle earners covered 17 days of government spending. The bottom 40% altogether covered 4 days. And if you take the folks below the 40%, we spent 103 days of spending. We sent them money. We didn't tax them. We sent them money on the federal income tax side. Yet, when the intellectually vacuous go, well, just raise taxes. Okay, tell me how to get beyond the 17% GDP conundrum. The only model that really does that, and it's why much of the rest of the world uses a value-added tax, that every step of production you stack a tax on. Fine, maybe that's what we're going to have to do in 10 years, but understand that crushes the poor and crushes the working middle class because their consumption is so much higher than those at the higher income. And look, upper income taxpayers overwhelmingly finance the federal government. Yay! You take the top 20%. Look, the punchline here, get to the bottom 20%, we actually pay them. Take the bottom 40%. It's actually less than 5.5% of the total federal income tax. I don't know how much more progressive you can make the tax system. Now, if you want to do a super progressivity, great. So when the people keep lying about the budget resolution, which, please understand, I do not believe there was enough spending offsets in it. I want to make that perfectly clear. I actually felt incredibly let down. We spent months and months and months and months running around here trying to show people how you could modernize the delivery of services and lower the price of government. That scared too many people, so we got a budget resolution with functioning baseline is $1.2 trillion and cuts another $0.5 trillion if shock absorbers, and yet it's a $4.5 trillion authorization, meaning you would end up borrowing 3.3. 1.7 is discretionary, completely unenforceable, and another 2.6 trillion of income is magic thinking that somehow the GDP is going to grow 40% over baseline because we're so good looking. And in that sentence I just gave you, I just made a whole bunch of people angry, but it's math. Find me a credible economist who actually is truth teller and say somehow magically in a time where the United States has a shortage of young people. Remember, 7.5 years we have more deaths than births? And somehow magically we're going to start growing at this freakishly incredible rate while pulling stimulus out of the economy, which we have to do. There's a way to make this work, but unless you're willing to do hard things, and then the army of people will show up saying, "Oh, David, I really want to balance the budget, but I need more spending because, well, that's how I get elected. I bring the bacon home." That bacon is put on your own credit cards. The highest earning 20% of taxpayers pay 90% of all federal income taxes. Let's try it one more time. The highest earning 20% of taxpayers pay 90% of all federal income taxes. It's math. It's not comfortable. It doesn't fit almost any of the speeches you hear from the left on behind the microphone. It's a tax cut for billionaires and rich people. But that's not what the math says. Because when it comes to math, we're able to lie about it all the time because it's big, it's hard. Trillion, 12 zeros. No one can see that. So you can just make crap up around here. It's too complicated. I think I've brutalized this enough. So let's actually go to one more time the chart that gets me the most complaints, it upsets the most people, and yet happens to be absolutely truthful. The next 30 years, this is the CBO using current law, not make-believe of let's just continue to pretend we can extend policy and it has no cost because the bond markets aren't going to pay any attention when we're bringing trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to the bond market. The world's happy to just keep giving us all their capital. One more time, 100% of the next 30 years of borrowing is Medicare and its financing costs. Social Security, because remember, 8 years from now, Social Security Trust Fund's empty. We doubled senior poverty. Yay, good job, guys. We doubled senior poverty in 8 years. Because the average recipient is getting something like a 20% cut. How many people speechifying around here have been talking about how to stabilize Social Security? But it's hard. They'll run television ads saying mean things about you because you mentioned the word Social Security. The absolute immorality of modern politics and how little the public understands. Well, they stole the money. No, no one stole the money. The average family with their 40 quarters actually gets about a $72,000 spiff out of Social Security. It's a crap rate of return. It's a horrible rate of return. But many of you were the ones that went to war 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when President Bush said, could we take a little tiny piece and put it into the markets? And today you would have dramatically greater wealth. That decision was made. The public spoke. Actually, the leftist unions spoke and scared the crap out of people. But the real battle is we're almost to the point for every dollar you put into Medicare and that payroll tax, you're almost taking out, well, $7. That right there is the primary driver of U.S. debt. So do you cut things? No. My argument is modernize, change it. My little example of the duplicative MRIs and scans and those things. Why are we so terrified to modernize how we deliver health care? How many of you went to Blockbuster Video last night? The fact of the matter is a technology change where you now go home and hit a button, there's all your movies. Oh, well, that made my life more convenient. You're telling me that the thing you can blow into, the thing you can wear on your body, the technology in this, you couldn't also use it to keep yourself healthy. When obesity is the single biggest expenditure in this government. Think about that. We modeled last year that obesity will add another $9 trillion of additional spending. $9.1 trillion on the top end of spending over the next 10 years. Maybe the revolution is the way you stabilize U.S. debt is stop being fearful of technology, be willing to actually modernize and cut spending where it's not working for the American people, and help our brothers and sisters get healthier. And that means taking on farm bills, nutrition policy, how we deliver health care. Maybe things like Medicare Advantage and these things should be rewarded for making their populations healthier instead of running around scoring them as sicker. There are solutions here. We've known this chart for decades, that this is coming. Why the hell can't this place have an honest conversation? Oh, David, that's hard. The president stood there just a couple days ago, gave us a list of things he wanted to help the middle class. He also asked us to find a way to balance the budget. I'm not sure I can make that happen, but I think I can get us to 3%, which is what the Treasury Secretary asked for. Mr. Speaker, My question is, who's willing to join us? I mean, I hand out my binders with research from months and months and months. I footnote everything. And you guys just beat the crap out of me for trying to tell the truth and trying to save us. Screw me. I'm an idiot who runs for this job. But you have kids. How many of you have grandkids? How many of you like your retirement? How many of you are prepared for a 20% cut in your Social Security in 8 years? Help us. This republic's worth saving. Maybe we should actually buy calculators. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.